Today's podcast was proudly brought to you by Gig Salad. Whether you're a solo artist or in a band, Gig Salad connects you with event planners from across the US and Canada for weddings, parties, corporate events, and a lot more. You're going to get leads that match your availability, the styles of music that you want to play, and you're going to get top visibility on Google, and your gig money is guaranteed every single time. I've been using Gig Salad for a long time. I fully recommend them. So head on over to gigsalad.com, create your free profile, and let them know that the Everything Saxophone Podcast sent you. Hey everybody, Donna here from the Everything Saxophone Podcast, and my guest, he's an awesome guy. It's Witt. We've spoken before on the podcast, and we missed each other at NAMM. Like, I don't know how we missed each other. He was trying to get a hold of me, and I must have been passed out in a corner, but unfortunately missed each other at NAMM. But hopefully we're going to meet face to face one day. That would be awesome. But we have our special guest today is Witt. Welcome back to the podcast, Woody.
Hey Donna, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
No, listen, I love having you here. And we were email chatting, and Woody's got a new album out called Awakenings. And so he sent it to me, and I'm listening to him like, this has some Miles Davis vibes. And the Miles Davis, like 60s era kind of 50s, late 50s, 60s era kind of vibes to it. I'm like, this is pretty freaking cool. And then he sends me an email about his thoughts on the album. And he talks about that a little bit. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that was really cool that we were kind of like on the same wavelength. I didn't read that thing until afterwards. So we're definitely going to talk about his new album. We're going to see what's been up with him since the last time that we spoke. It's a couple of years ago, actually, when you had created the Etude book with the videos. I thought that was just so cool. All right. And I'm going to have some horn questions for him too. We were talking about this beforehand. Because the other thing also too, Woody, that I'm going to want us to get into, your technique is just insane. It's ridiculous. And I'm watching, there's two videos out from the new album right now. They're out right now. And he's playing the ultimate extremes of the range on the tenor sax. And he looks like he's doing nothing. So, so we're going to talk about that, okay? Because I think people are going to want to know, and they're going to want to know what you practice and you know how you've been able to develop that insane technique, okay? But first, let's do this. Let's do like a little bit of recap in terms of where you're at right now, where are you teaching right now, where you're located. Give us a little bit of a background.
Yeah, happy to. I am currently, everything's pretty much the same as the last time we spoke. I run the saxophone studio over at University of Houston, Moore School of Music. And currently this semester, which we start in about a week, I have 16 students in there. It's a very healthy program. I'm also a full-time instructor at Houston Community College and teach some academic music classes and private instruction there. And also keep pretty active playing gigs in and around the Houston area and some traveling too, but not a whole lot with that teaching schedule because I probably teach about 5 days a week.
Yeah, I'm just thinking to myself, that would be really hard to that would be really hard to tour. So, you know what? I'm just curious then, right? You have the new album. How are you how are you promoting it then? If it's right, it's so you're laughing. So how are you promoting it if you're not able to tour as much?
Well, I am going to tour. I am doing a short tour, about 12 days, to get out and play. Fortunately, I can do some rescheduling of students, and just kind of manipulate things that way and get it covered. Maybe even take a personal leave day or two as needed, that kind of thing to be able to go. It's not as extensive as I might want to do, but it is the kind of touring that I'm doing is centered around presenting concerts and master classes at schools. So we'll be at University of Colorado Boulder, which has a great jazz program, and I've been there now. This will be the second time to go there. Going to be playing a couple of clubs. Also doing a clinic at West Texas A&M in the Amarillo, Texas area, Texas State University in the Austin area, and then things in the Houston area, a couple of a private house concert and one public show to release the CD. And then we'll close out our tour with a clinic and a concert at Lamar University in Beaumont.
This is okay. This is really cool. I'm going to track back to something that you just said that I think not enough jazz musicians know about, and they really should. And let me preface this by saying, I like a lot of styles of music. I especially liked, for a long time, and I still do, folk music. And
Hmm.
Annie DeFranco was this person. She's still playing. She's in the Buffalo area of New York, and she's the one that maybe she was one of the first ones that started this and such. I know she was one of the first ones I think on Stage It, which is a platform that if people want to perform online, and you can people give you tips. Michael Lincoln has killed it on there for sure, but also house concerts. A lot of folk musicians tend to do this. There's a whole network across the country. There's organizations, but when it first started, there was nothing. And the idea, especially those of you that are listening that are jazz players, right? You're looking to get yourself started. You want to build a fan base like Taylor Swift. You want to build super fans. And the way to do that, you get yourself in your own area playing a lot of shows and stuff. Try to get some house concerts, play at somebody's house. And then, see who they know and try to, loop together like house concerts and then sell your merchandise and whatnot. And when you do those house concerts, you can put in the contract, they have to maybe put you up, feed you, all that kind of thing. But it's something that I don't think enough jazz musicians explore. And I think it's a great way for getting more super fans and more interest in the music.
It's one of my favorite ways to perform, to be honest. I've done several concerts here in the Houston area. Since I teach at a community college, I've had a lot of uh, private students that are adults, and some of whom, do quite well for themselves, have other careers, and play music as a passion. And I've had students, as a matter of fact, the person who's hosting the house concert that we're doing here is a former student. He's a brain surgeon, and he's also a drummer, and he lives in a beautiful home, has a beautiful space, and he's hosted me a couple of times at his place. And I just love that environment because it's very intimate. The people that come there are, really, we know who's coming. It's like they're friends, they're fans, maybe family members, his family members and such. So, in spite of Houston being such a big city, the music community itself is pretty small and fairly, tight knit. And so I have a really good community around me, and getting to play in that kind of environment, I just love it because those people that come there are there to listen, and uh, it's just a very intimate way to play. And usually, we're going to be playing in a beautiful space, and we'll have food and drink, and we'll be hanging out and get to talk and chat and all that, in addition to, playing great music.
That's really cool. And hopefully, I know Texas can get some crazy weather. So I'm hoping that it's going to be the
Yeah,
time of year
yes.
where it's going to be normal, no hurricanes or anything like that. And it's not going to be too
Yeah,
cold.
it should be. That's supposed to be post hurricane season, and
Good.
we don't have much of a fall, but usually October is pretty pleasant.
All right,
And the
that's
school
cool.
year is underway,
And you're saying the school year,
so
yeah, the school year's
it's
underway.
easier to feel like presenting and with the teachers at the schools, and work with their students and be able to offer whatever you can in a short period of time and it's a great way to be able to move some merchandise. They I think that in those kinds of situations, people are inspired because they're around you and they get to know you, and then they want to take something with them to remember the event, whether it be a CD or maybe a T-shirt or something like that.
Absolutely. And, that's the whole thing too, because the house concerts are, it's an experience, and
Hmm.
music is an experience. And when people are in an experience, you're moving them in such a way, and like you said, absolutely, it's a great way to move merchandise and get more super fans, and people know people, and you could start to get this whole connection of house concerts going, or even connections into larger venues, or whatever's in those areas. So I think that's great that you're doing that. That's awesome, and no, kudos to you for doing that. And hopefully, again, just a bonus tip for people. We weren't even thinking about talking about this, but something to think about, something to pursue, no matter what your age. In fact, the name escapes me, I can't believe it, but a well-known saxophone player just turned 100 and just put out his debut album, and the name just went out of my head. But you could be at
Hmm.
any age to put an album out. Okay, so I will put
Yeah,
that
yeah.
info about the 100-year-old saxophone player that just put out the debut album, because you could be any age and do whatever you want. All right, but anyway, I digress.
100 years old.
100
Oh,
years old.
wow.
Yes, yes.
Amazing.
It's incredible. It's absolutely incredible. So,
That's beautiful.
oh yeah, for sure. All right, so now I want to get into your new album, Awakenings. And my first question is going to be kind of an obvious one, but what inspired you to create this album, and what inspired you? What was the motivation?
That's a great question. For me, this is my first album, solo album in about 10 years. And I really have questioned whether or not I even wanted to release, a new album. But over the past 8 to 10 years, I've been traveling to South America and playing a few times and built a relationship with several musicians down there. The musicians that are featured on this record, we've played together a few times. As a matter of fact, we toured in the US about 2 years ago. And it was during that tour that the pianist, Felipe Silveira, had said to me very bluntly, he said, "We have to record this band and do something together." And they record all the time. The musicians that are on the record, Felipe, Tiago Alves on bass, and Paulinho Vicente on drums, they play together as kind of they back up many different musicians. They play with, and played and recorded with Ryan Caberly, a trombonist who plays in the Maria Schneider Big Band, guitarist Davey Mooney, who teaches up at University of North Texas. His wife is from Brazil. Played with him. They played with many different people. So the group has a great chemistry. And then the addition of Daniel Dalcantara on trumpet. Daniel's just a wonderful trumpet and flugelhorn player, and his father was a professional trumpet player.
Okay.
And so just like really entrenched in the music. And playing with them is, I don't know, there's just something really special that comes out of it because while they are all very much steeped in the Brazilian tradition of the traditional music of Brazil, like bossa nova and samba and things like that, they are also very much into American jazz and in particular, like the music of the 60s Miles Davis Quintet and that kind of energy and freedom that's in that music. So I knew I was going to go down there and tour with them and planning to record with them. So I wrote music that was really geared towards giving that space to the group. So I was thinking about the band when I was writing music, wanting
Okay.
freedom in it, modally based tunes or tunes that have very minimal harmony. One of the songs that we did, something called Echoes of the Past, I wrote in different sections. And uh, the first section is some really kind of obtuse chords that don't really fit a particular, they're hard to notate, so I just wrote the chords themselves.
Oh, interesting.
And then the second section of the piece, there's no chord changes whatsoever. It's just a melody, and I left it to the bassist and pianist to decide what they wanted to play.
Wow.
And the main body of the song is a five measure phrase that loops over and over again, and we keep playing the melody all the way through it, and then we're kind of weaving in and out of like maybe the trumpet is soloing, maybe the saxophone is soloing, the piano is soloing. So it's not any one individual solo. It's more like collective improvisation, kind of like modern Dixieland or something, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
Uh,
Not
and we
really
do
though.
that
Yeah.
in
All right.
some of the songs, which I really like because it allows you to listen. It's very becomes very conversational kind of playing.
Yes.
Uh,
Yeah. That I
you
caught.
know?
Yeah, for sure.
And I love that feeling because the whole time you're creating and in that moment in creating like that, I find it keeps me from playing maybe things that I might typically fall into of my own language and such because I'm listening and following and tracking or suggesting something and trying to lead them, as we play. So it challenges me in a different way than
Yes.
than just like a full-blown improvisation, like say what I did on that tune Derecho, where it's more like a kind of a Coltrane inspired, jaunt, and breaks down into a free improvisation between me and the drums.
Yes. All right. I want to backtrack for a second. And here's what I want to do. And guys, I've never done this on the podcast before. So I'm going to actually share a screen. And
Okay.
what I'd like to do is I want to go back to Echoes, that song, and I want to pull that up. That's one of the ones that, if I'm not mistaken, it's on it's on YouTube. And
Yes,
so,
they're not, so the listeners know, I haven't made any of those public yet. So
oh,
I just,
okay.
it's okay. They will be soon. They will be. But I had to have some things that I could give to people for promo, to get it out there, get the word out about the recording.
That okay, that explains a lot. Okay, so as I'm pulling this up then, I thought it was really cool. It was very interesting. You had mentioned that, kind of like a modern day Dixieland. I don't know if I feel that. I feel that it's because to me Dixieland, everybody's um improvising over each other. I understand there's parts where that does happen in this piece, but I do feel that there's still more of a sense of freedom, and maybe that's why you're saying it's more of a modern sense of this. There is more of a sense of freedom, and it's not just soloing on top of each other, but there is an interplay of ideas. So let me go here, and I'm going to share my screen in 2 seconds because I'd like for people to hear this. Hold on, and those people that know me know that I have a million windows up at once. I really do. And I am not embarrassed to say that I do that. All right. So I'm going to share my screen. Those of you that are listening to the audio, that's awesome. Those of you that are watching the video, by the time that this comes out, we should be able to have access to that. But actually, if we come out a little earlier than that, then you're getting a sneak peek, which is pretty cool. So
I love that.
yeah, which would be really cool. All right. So I'm going to play a bit of this, and then I may stop at points just to chat and just see what's going on. So everybody should be able to see my screen. It's called Echoes of the Past. All right. And just to show you some of the instrumentalists over here, you can see this on the bottom. Woody Witt's playing tenor saxophone. Daniel D'Alcantara is playing trumpet. He's a great trumpet player. Holy cow. He's incredible. Um, and actually, I'm going to make some comments later for the other piece as well. Felipe Silveira on piano, Tiago Alves on bass, Paulinho Vicente on drums. So let's check out a little bit of Echoes of the Past. This part's hard to get in sync with everybody coming at the same time. It's like we're waiting in anticipation. Here we go. for a second. Okay, first of all, people don't realize, like, Daniel's playing some really high notes, and
Yeah.
and it's not. This is melodic in a different way. There's a lot of one of the things I noticed, especially with your playing, it's a lot of angular. You mentioned Coltrane inspired for Derecho, yeah, but you know what? I think that he really inspired your playing because there's a lot of like angular types of things going on. And even with this piece over here, is this improvised, or is this part, the actual, was this part arranged with you and the trumpet?
Well, what I did is he and I are both reading the same part. And I intentionally told him, I said, I don't want us to be directly in unison. So if you think of like Ornette Coleman and like
Yeah,
the albums that Ornette did in the late 50s and early 60s with Don Cherry, where they'd kind of be in unison, but they're like slightly off.
yeah,
So that was intentional. So you'll notice there's times where I'm playing ahead of him or I'm playing behind him. Um, and this is the part where I was talking. I didn't even give chord changes or anything to the piano or to the bass in that melodic section. I said, just play something. So the opening part was composed, the specific chords, and also it's a very, very slow tempo at the beginning.
yeah,
And same kind of thing. I didn't want them to align. I wanted them to allow it to just kind of move from one sound to another. So it should have that looseness. Some people, when they listen to it, might think, oh, it sounds like it's a mistake or something. But that part was intended. It was like I wanted, they could do even more with that. And sometimes in a studio setting, you're trying to manufacture that kind of thing. It can be easier to do in a live setting where you're directly next to each other. We're all in separate spaces and separate rooms,
right.
and kind of dealing with visual contact and all that in order to get through.
Okay, that's very interesting. I'm glad that you explained that. What I think a lot of people also may not realize too. A lot of people say, "Oh, I have such a hard time with timing and keeping in time." But I got to tell you, once you understand timing and you're feeling grooves, I think it's really hard to do what this is what's happening here with you guys, because we're always searching for the groove. We're always searching for, I'm always subdividing, and musicians are always trying to subdivide, and you could subdivide, but the thing is that we're always trying to be in sync with the rhythm section, and that's really hard to to not, to purposely not align.
That what this is what I would refer to this as melodic time, meaning that the melody and the movement of the melody is suggesting the time. So, and it can have an expansiveness to it. It can stretch or contract. So that's the way that we're playing the melody, where it's kind of like moving ahead and moving back and moving ahead and moving back. Um, I love that kind of music that follows that kind of movement. There's a freedom within that that goes beyond just say harmonic freedom. It's like the melody dictates the pulse instead of the pulse dictating the melody.
That is very cool. And if I can add something to that, it's not like you could just start off doing this. You have to really own your sense of timing to be able
Right.
to, you have to, it's like Bach counterpoint, right? You've got to know the rules before you can break them. You have to really
Yeah.
feel time really well in order to be able to break time, so that's really cool. All right, awesome.
So when Felipe wanted to do something that, worked with, the freedom in the group, that's one of the reasons why I wrote something that was like this, because I trusted them and was thinking about the way that they played. And it's like, I just want to give them the opportunity to play what they want to play. An interesting side note about this, when we recorded this, we recorded it after about a week of playing. But when we first played those songs, we did not rehearse. I showed up in Sao Paulo and came to the first gig that we had, and I handed out lead sheets at the gig. and we played them in the moment, and I gave them small verbal instructions before we played, and the music just started to kind of like come together through the gigs instead of like this elaborate rehearsal process and giving someone like all kinds of instruction. I was like, screw that. Completely different way of like doing music. It was like I just put the music out there and I thought about the way these guys played and I wanted to give them the freedom to be able to play the way they wanted to. And I wish I had a recording of the first gig
Mm.
because it really did go like exceptionally well from the get-go. It just there was an energy in the music that was happening, and it just continued to build and evolve over the course of the week.
I would also think too that this is something that not everybody can do in the sense that this rhythm section knows each other. They know each other
Yes.
really well, and I'll equate this to sports. You know, you have baseball teams, for example. Like I'll always use the 1986 Mets when they won the World Series. You know, it was a scrappy team, but it was they knew each other. You know, they understood each other, and it made it work. You can cite whatever sports team you want. You know, Kansas City Chiefs right now, they're just like they just pull it together, you know? So, that's really cool. And were you nervous at all doing that? No, okay. Yeah.
I've played with them enough and trusted them. I had no, I was just excited. I was like waiting in anticipation because when you compose, I'm sitting here thinking, is this music going to work?
Right.
Is this really going to like how are they going to express themselves through this? And as much as I wanted to like try the music with other people in advance and like try the tunes out, I think I read through one of the things, a couple of them with a pianist friend of mine just to kind of hear someone else play them with me. But I basically did not workshop that music in advance. I was writing it just up until like maybe a couple of weeks before I went there.
Wow.
And most of these tunes came together very quickly. They were just uh, fast sketches, like Derecho, I think I wrote in about 20 minutes. I mean, it was just this like thing. I sat down at the piano and I kind of started going with this line and created this intervallic line. And I didn't have a name for the song at first. And it's such a highly energized song. About the same time that I wrote the song, we had this horrible windstorm
Oh my
in
gosh.
Houston, a derecho. A derecho is a straight line windstorm, and it stretched like over 100 miles long and caused all this kind of like crazy damage, knocking out windows and blowing over trees and all that. And people were thinking it was a tornado, but they later said that it was this straight line windstorm and kind of a rare storm at that. And I thought, oh wow, that's like the perfect name for this song, this tune, because the tune is almost like a windstorm, like the line like climbs up and climbs down. It's really awkward and angular. It's
Yes.
um, hard to play
Yes, it
uh,
is.
on any instrument, because it covers such a wide swath. But kind of like this, crazy winds that were in this storm.
Wow. All right, you know what? Let's do that because I had that queued up also, the YouTube
Okay.
video. And I gotta say, like I'm listening to some like, oh my God, this is like really hard. And it's hard enough for a woodwind player, but for a brass player to do some of this stuff, I mean, it's not only angular, you said awkward, but it's going extremes to the range for all
Yeah,
kinds
and
of
it's fast. So
fast.
it's yeah, and I even told, I told Daniel, I was like, he said, some of the things that are in here, I don't know that I can execute it just because of the way that it lays on the trumpet. And I said, well, just play what you can play. And then when we mixed it, they just kind of put me up in the mix a little bit more because I'm playing all the notes. I practiced the head. I made sure I could. It's like if I write it, I better be able to play it. And just because you write it doesn't mean that you can. I've written things before, like some of my etudes and stuff. It's like, why did I write this? But With this, it was similar. It was like, man, this is really hard. So I've got to get this under my fingers and feel and in my ear and really hear it so that when I'm playing it with a group, I can be confident.
Well, let's place a little bit of this, and now, listeners, check this out. Listen to the horns when they come in. Your jaw's gonna drop. Got this openness. Yeah, so that's a crazy line. That's a crazy line. It's cool though. It is so cool. But I'm thinking about it from a brass and a saxophone perspective. And yeah, I mean, y'all have crazy chops, and to be able to do that, but even just to be able to conceive that, that's very cool. I know a lot of people can be like, I've got to transcribe that one. Yeah.
I've been thinking about arranging it for big band.
Oh God. And,
I
and then the next
can
thing,
hear a big band doing it, with brass, playing
oh
those
my
those big chords at the beginning, and
God.
maybe like saxophones and guitar or something on the melody. You could really like
Oh.
shred that. That would be really cool.
And then the next piece would be Four Brothers. No, I'm just kidding.
There you go.
Oh my gosh, I'm gonna tell all my big band students this is gonna be their next piece. Yeah, I'm gonna do that. It's gonna be awesome. This is great though. I want to play a little bit more because I want to talk about well, first of all, the modal influence. You could definitely feel that the open chords, you could definitely feel that, and the angular playing, absolutely. And then like the bridge section, so to speak, it's more melodic. It's a little bit more scale-like, right? And a little bit, more traditional, and then it breaks out into this open kind of feeling. But I want to when we get to your solo, because I want to talk a little bit about that. So let me go a little bit more here. Right, developing that two-note motif. Notes here. Double take. Playing with time. I just want to say this because like you start off sparse, and then you got this two-note motif, you develop it, and then you get into these really intricate lines, a lot of like enclosures, chromaticism, all that kind of thing, the angular playing, going into extreme range, and then you get a three-note motif, you're developing it, and then um we're in the middle, kind of in the middle of that. So like when you're okay, when you're improvising, right? You're just thinking this through, right? You're thinking, you just started off sparse and you're like, okay, I'm hearing this, and then you start to develop it, right? Let me actually get it from you, because what were you thinking
Okay.
when you were improvising this?
I am doing my best to not think about a damn thing.
Okay.
I am trying to listen to the band. Um, I know that I likely decided because the melody itself, is so active and there's so much energy coming out of the head that I want to allow it to settle. So after the melody happens, I was like, okay, where is this going to go? And we had played it a few times. This was, by the way, this was just done in one take.
Oh, wow. Okay.
This is
Wow.
live, and the energy to do more than one take of this, like because it breaks down into, and it wasn't planned this way, but it breaks down into a duet between me and Paulinho. But that had happened in live performance, so I wasn't surprised when it occurred. Um, I'm just trying to listen. I mean, I'm listening to the chords. Felipe has such a beautiful harmonic sense. The solos are not based on any quote changes. It's kind of centered in the key of F, but the melody is kind of based on this. If I was to spell it in, my key and tenor key, it'd be like G, A flat, B, C, D, E flat, F, G. It's like a harmonic minor, a fifth mode harmonic minor,
Okay.
but I'm kind of like going between like harmonic minor mode sound and there's another scale that I like to use I think it's called the Fregish scale, which is almost like double harmonic minor that it uses like the two harmonic minor uh, uh, four note grouping. So it'd be like G, A flat, B, C. So like the last four notes of C harmonic minor, and
Right.
then like D, E flat, F sharp, G, which is the last four notes of G harmonic minor. And you put
Interesting.
those two together, it's really a common scale used in like traditional Jewish music. You hear that thing, and I love like the flat nine sound, but against a major third. Point is, I mean, I'm thinking about some of those things because that's in the melody, but I'm also listening to what Felipe is playing, and he's playing things that are completely outside of the key. And so I'm hearing what he's playing in terms of the direction he's going into. So there are times where I'm inspired by a chord that he plays, or I'm listening to the rhythm. I also know that in this kind of playing to create the interplay with the other musicians, playing short ideas and leaving space builds tension and builds the energy in the music. So right now you're hearing me kind of play where we stopped, playing these kind of like stop and go type ideas, where it's like
Right.
dee da dee da dee da da dee ba da dee da 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 dee ba da. So there's like it's very fragmented,
Mm,
and the fragments allow room for the drums to. It kind of suggests rhythmic ideas to the drums, or gives space where the pianist can boom play a chord in the middle of it. And I'm also taken as I'm listening to Tiago, he's not just playing a simple walking line, he starts playing off of the beat. He's a ding 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 ding, and he's playing like dotted, almost like dotted quarter or dotted half notes, but they're off of the beat. So the beat almost feels displaced for a moment, but he comes out of it beautifully, like into a walking line, and it's like, man, there's so much there's so many layers in this music. Um,
yeah. Yeah.
you
And
know,
and actually, I'm thinking to myself too, we're going to listen to some more of this in a second, but I'm just thinking to myself too. So you're listening, right? But every time that you play this piece, it's going to be different.
Extremely, yes.
Yeah. I mean, you may start off conceptually with, I'm going to start off sparse, and then, I may develop two notes, three notes, but it's like you're thinking, let me stop the share for 1 second. I should have done this a
Yeah.
few minutes ago. I apologize. But you're thinking, you said something along the lines of, you're doing your best to not think about a damn thing. You're
Yeah.
okay. So I take notes when I do this. This is why I take notes. So you're doing that, but you're experiencing the music and you're experiencing it on a bigger picture level. So, like,
Yeah.
for example, I like to use the analogy. Like, when I went to Queens College, we had a teacher who, Carl Schachter, who taught us Schenkerian analysis. And Schenkerian
Mhm.
analysis is when you have the big one, the big 5/7, which in Western music is the big chord of tension. Oh my God, 5/7. Ooh, tension. Not really, but Okay, the big 5/7, and then the final resolution of the one. That's music. That's Western music. And
Mhm.
so I was explaining this to my students that you want to dig into the music so that you could step back and do what you're doing on this album, which is not thinking granularly. You did the grunt work. It's you're able to react to each other and have that conversation. And just how you mentioned, the Phrygius scale. Phrygius? How do you say that?
Friggish.
Phrygish. Okay, Phrygish.
Friggish. Yep.
Okay, I'm not.
I
I've
think it's Freygish. Friggish,
why? Okay.
I believe. I've seen it spelled a couple different ways, but
Yeah, but I'm sure I've heard it before, but um,
yeah.
yeah, but not slapped a label on it until right now, which is pretty cool. But the thing though is that you're saying you listen to the piano player, the bass player, they're doing all these different types of things. You're hearing some chromaticism playing out of the key, and so this is where you know there may not be implied chord changes per se, but this is where you're thinking of types of chord scales that you can use. Not a blues scale, not a pentatonic. This is something that's a little bit different. These are also, scales that are maybe not as common. Or a lot of people like to think in terms of like four note cells, motifs developed that way. But which in a sense you were kind of doing because you were developing two notes and then three notes, and then you would go off in a more intricate line. And then, like you said, fragmented again. So that's really interesting. And just the fact, I want to say this again, but short ideas and leaving space, that brings out the tension. Okay. So, I think that's a really great, great tip. It's a great tip for those
Well,
people
too
that are,
often people play too much. People, improvisers, I hear people play too much. I play too much. I hear myself play too much. The I think that the magic happens in music when we leave space and we allow room for, the other musicians to comment, to play something. Um, Not to say that you can't play a long line, there's a place for that, but if you start with long lines and everything is really busy and involved from the get-go, well, how does your solo develop? Where does it go? Because ultimately when you're improvising, you're composing. You're creating something in the moment. And the cool thing about this song and some of these songs that we did is like this has no real chord structure for us to play on. It's just kind of a suggested tonal center. So there's so much freedom for the band
yeah,
and for the soloist. And that can be overwhelming. That it can be overwhelming to the sense of like, uh, hinder you to be able to play. But I look at it like, well, just work with one idea at a time and allow it to build and allow it to grow. I really don't, when I was improvising in this, I know that I was never consciously thinking about any scale or sound. I practiced scales and sounds before. When I wrote the melody, of course, I kind of dissected what it was. I didn't even think about what the melody was when I wrote it. I didn't say, well, let me write a melody that uses a scale. It's just like after I played it, I realized, oh, this is based on this scale. So I discovered that through analysis after the fact. Um, I
interesting.
just think of improvisation as composition and trying to create textures, timbre, sound, reacting to the other people that are around me. And when if you play like the rest of the solo or into the rest of the solo, it becomes more active because the drums well, one, because the piano and the bass drop out, so there's more room. And
Yeah,
then it becomes more of a dialogue between me and the drummer. And at that point, the drummer, Paulinho, has like incredible hands. I mean, his technique is like ridiculous.
yeah,
And I found myself, playing off of what he's doing, and I'm listening to him, and I'm playing with uh, more activity. And because of the tension that had built up earlier in the solo, by the time it got to that point, it's like a lot of energy. And at that time, then, It's like you just respond. You're just playing in the moment. Because when I say trying not to think about a damn thing, it's being present is what it is. It's like I try to meditate uh, pretty regularly. And, when you meditate, it's about being in that moment and try, even though there are thoughts that might be rushing through your mind, um, that's normal. That's what happens. You learn to become an observer and let the thoughts pass through you, but in that time, maybe you're focusing strictly upon your breath and concentrating on breathing in and blowing out
Mm.
and breathing in and blowing out the whole while all these other things that are happening. So even in playing, it's like there could be so many stimulus coming at you from the piano or the bass or the drums or even your own playing. But in the moment, it's like blow and let it happen. Let it flow out of you.
Wow, that's
I don't know
really
if that makes sense or not.
no, it does. It absolutely does.
I'm kind of just talking in streams right now.
In fragments, in fragments. Just kidding. No, but no, no, that totally makes sense. The thing that I just want to impress upon people is that you have to have you can't just like, oh, that's improvisation. That's what I'm going to do. I'm not going to work in anything, and I'm just going to like breathe, and whatever comes out of me comes out of me. No, that's absolutely not what we're saying. You have to, again, you have to build the groundwork. You got to build the foundation so you could have the freedom to do that, you know?
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. All right. So now let me share my screen again for those of you watching the video. And for those of you on audio, you're going to take a listen. You're going to watch the video later. You're going to go to the Everything Saxophone Podcast YouTube channel and check this out, or our website, saxophonepodcast.com, for this episode to check it out. So I'm about 2 minutes, 14 seconds into the solo, and I'm going to be like, I'm going to be talking about the music, but also we got to talk about your technique and how you prepare, what you work on to do this. Okay.
I
So,
got an idea
oops. Oh, okay.
before you start playing it.
Yeah.
The lengthy solo. Maybe go up about 4 to about 420 or so.
Okay.
That's about the point where it's like in the middle of a pretty heated duet with the drums.
Got it. So we're gonna go around like 418 or something. All right, check it out. Now over here, so you're having this dialogue with the drums, and then there's, again, the extreme ranges, and the chromaticism and the longer lines, but also there's space. There's space to take it in. And then you hit a high note, you hold it because you're trying to release some tension there and let it breathe for a second. And then the band's starting to come in, and then you're starting to get into some of the longer lines again, and reacting and listening. So you want to talk a little bit about this section.
Yeah, because it just shows, it shows like the energy, like for example, a place where I'm playing a lot. There's not really a lot of space in there. There is space within it. There's space between phrases,
Right.
but it's dense, and the ideas are kind of like spilling on top of each other. And Felipe and Tiago, the pianist and bassist, and Paulinho, who was in the heat of playing with me, just brilliantly come in with no cue, boom, on a downbeat in a very logical point within the solo,
Yeah.
because listening to what's happening and we just keep going, you know. And that was spontaneous, that was not planned, that was not worked out, that was not discussed in any way. When
Wow.
we were in the studio, it was just like it happened.
Wow.
Uh, we had played the song, but every time we played the song, it had been a little bit different. Um, the only thing I would say about the tune is it had kind of turned into something that was more of I would often have a dialogue with Paulinho, where it would kind of get to that point.
Yeah.
So it felt natural, but not planned.
That's really you have to have such a level of sophistication
Hmm.
in your playing. And it's not just harmonically, it's rhythmically too,
Yeah.
to feel that. And just the fact that, again, those of you that are just listening, please watch this video, and we're going to put links to these videos when this episode comes out. But as Woody was saying, they were in different rooms, you know?
Yeah.
So when you're in the recording studio, in some recording studios, you're in isolation, you know, from each other. But that's what makes this really incredible, that they were like in sync like that. That's where people are really in sync in their listening. They're one with the music. And I'm curious, um, when you've played this piece after this recording, after you did this video, right? And you said it comes out a little bit, yeah, it has to come out, I guess, a little bit different each time. I wonder, well, I'm just thinking off the top of my head, you should probably get recordings of every time that you play this piece, and then you could have one album of just Derecho because like how.
Strangely enough, I haven't actually played the piece since that recording session.
Oh, okay, I'm going to be
So
curious
I've
though.
I've
Yeah.
shelved the tunes. I know I'm going to be, touring with them in October, so
You are.
those
Okay.
those tunes are going to come out again. We'll play them live, uh, and we'll probably play some other things too. I might even write something new for the band, in honor of the fact that we're coming together. Because I mean, I love CD releases, to like get a chance to play, revisit music. But it doesn't have to be just, rehashing what's already on the recording, especially when it's something that is as,
Dynamic.
yeah, and open like this, it's like, um,
Mm.
it really doesn't, it almost to me doesn't matter what we play with the band because we can bring that aesthetic, to all of me if we wanted to. Which we've done. We've done things like that where we've played standards. We did a concert, of all the music, a lot of music of, a Brazilian composer named Johnny Alf, who's really considered to be like the father of the bossa nova, long before Jobim. Now, most people in the U.S. don't know much about Johnny Alf at all, but we
No.
played this concert of all these Johnny Alf songs, and at the end they wanted to just play a standard, and we played "What Is This Thing Called Love." It was just quartet, so it was a rhythm section and me, and we played it kind of like um, this recording that we're listening to, with just a lot of freedom, and it was so much fun, and we got done. And it was the day after that Felipe said we have to record this band because of the dynamic, that was, there between us, the chemistry of the group.
Yeah, something's coming to mind. Before you were saying that some of the pieces felt like a modern interpretation of Dixieland. I actually think this is more of an updated version of Ornette Coleman.
Oh,
Think about it, right? You know, with the freedom that's going on here. And yeah, that's what I'm thinking in my head right now. And again, it's not my pieces, but I'm just, after listening to this a few times, and with what the way this conversation is going, that's what I'm feeling here. And just the fact that, okay, I was going to ask you if these guys were going to tour with you. I think this would be really hard, I think, to tour with other musicians.
yeah.
Yeah.
I wouldn't tour it with other musicians. I mean,
Yeah.
no slight to any other musicians because there's some great bands that
No.
I've worked with. But I have a working group here in Houston, and I don't play this song, a lot of these songs with them. And it's not that they're not capable of it, they are, and we have a great rapport, but I wrote the music really for them.
For them, yeah, I was just about to say, you wrote it for those particular musicians, and the groove, the vibe, the energy that comes
Yeah.
together when you do that, and when you tour, you have to tour with this group of musicians. And Woody, I would strongly urge you have those each concert like recorded, because like you could have all the iterations of Derecho, all the iterations of some of the other pieces that are on there that are more of a free form type of style, more of like what I'm calling like a reinterpretation of free jazz, and it would be
Mhm.
really curious, for you to see, as you said to me before, this was interesting, your composition process. You were talking about this, and it just came out to you, you were writing it out, and then you analyzed it after, and I always say to people, yeah, listen, music theory, it's not to write music. Music theory is to analyze what happened, and so
Yeah.
like it came to you, and then okay, now let me see what's going on, the analyzation after. So with the recordings, just to see how these tunes evolve from this recording to after your 12th 15th time performing it live, maybe a totally different piece.
Probably, yeah. I will definitely. I'm totally planning to record our concerts, and we're going to be doing one of them. That's one of the shows is a really high quality live stream, so it'll be documented. So I'm excited about that because I want to be able to go back and see how the group evolves over time.
Oh my gosh, no, for sure.
I
And yeah,
have physical copies finally.
oh great, awesome.
I've got them here, and they really turned out beautiful. And I think I sent you the artwork and such.
Yeah.
But I'm just doing a limited run of CDs. We're doing some promo, to help support the tour and sending some review to a few places for print reviews and things like that. But I'm not doing a huge campaign to promote the record. I just don't see I would love to do that. I just don't have thousands of dollars to throw away.
Right, right. People don't realize how much money it takes to, number one, make the record, but then on top of that, to promote it. And it's very difficult to do that as a one person, show. You need quite a few people, and you do need money. You do need
Yeah.
money to bring it, to the attention of a lot of people. It's really tough, and that's why, I'm so glad that we're talking about this here, and that, for those of you listening, if you like this, again, we're going to have links to Woody's site, and links to how you could purchase his recordings and his previous stuff as well. But this is where you all come into play. You all come into play, and you all come into mind in terms of this. But let me go back. I want to share the screen again, talk a little bit more, listen a little bit more to the solo, and I want to talk
Sure.
about technique. Okay, so we're in the thick of things over here. Like around 448 in. Let
You
me
go back, maybe if you go back, uh, yeah, somewhere in there, then you might get into where it's
right.
not quite
Yeah, I'm thinking like
involved.
around 215, 216. Let me go here. Okay, check it out. Any notes? Right there. Hold on. You're using some false fingerings, right? Some overtone types of things going on there, and
Mhm.
I'm still catching like the two note. You're referring back to that often in this solo, and then going to the extreme register, the altissimo register, and you're going to the very low range of the horn. But also, there's times like the comping in the piano. At times, it's almost soloing, but not really.
Yeah.
Yeah, the rhythms are very intricate there.
Yeah, I mean, Felipe is really an incredible pianist and such a thoughtful accompanist. He's a lot of activity. And I think also having played with him a lot, playing a lot of Brazilian music with him, he plays, he adapts things to the piano that sound like guitar ideas. Like in terms of like you think of Brazilian comping on guitar, the rhythmic aspects of it, he can duplicate those kinds of things on the piano between his two hands. And I noticed at one point he's just playing like one note, but he's playing kind of like a rhythmic idea. You see him playing those two fingers like back and forth between the notes, kind of creating this rhythmic thing. It's and what I'm doing with the overtones and such create is a rhythmic idea more than anything as I hear it because I'm kind of responding to the sound that I'm hearing from him and then also from the drums creates like a cross rhythm with the time.
Okay, so like a cross rhythm with the time. So let me stop the share for 1 second over here. Yeah, let's talk about this. In terms of just the technical things that you're doing here, and people are going to want to know have you done, what have you done in your life to be able to, play like that? And this is not, you didn't sit for not even 5 hours. You didn't sit for 50 hours working out these lines per se. You know what I mean? Like some things I heard fragments in there and stuff that were developed that were really cool, but to have the technique to be able to do this across a huge, huge range and then doing, other quote unquote special effects, like, so can you talk about, what you work on to build your technique? I don't know if that's too broad of a
Yeah,
question.
it's a broad question, but I'm happy to, attack that. The thing is, where I'm at in my life now in practicing, I don't practice licks or phrases. I don't work on that kind of playing per se. I spent years doing that though. I did transcribe. We talked about this in the last episode. I know I did many, many transcriptions and dug into music in that way, and I learned you know bits and pieces of solos, uh, 2/5s, turnaround, 3/6 2/5s, other types of lines. Um, for me anymore, it's a matter of feeling comfortable on my instrument through the registers, to be able to play. I've got a good 3.5, 4 octave range, functional range on tenor. So I practice chords and scales that extend that range, that keep that range fluid. So I'll play like a real simple major scale pattern, like up a B flat major scale from low B flat 1 octave, go up a half step, go down B major, up a half step, go C major. And I'll play that from a low B flat to a double altissimo G.
Wow. Okay. Got it.
And then I'll play diatonic 13th chords on whatever, maybe a major chord. So B flat, D, F, A, C, E flat, G, B flat, and then go up to C and go down to minor 13th and do it like for B flat major scale and do that all the way up to double altissimo G. So I practice basic foundational technique to double altissimo G like over and over again. So I have no problem playing a double altissimo G, over and over again because I practice it and I practice melodies and I practice chords and I practice scales. And then when you have a fluidity in that register, then you can use it. And I do use it. And uh, through using it, it just, I don't know, it seems like it becomes even more a part of my palette, I guess you could say,
Yeah.
like the way that I approach playing the tenor.
Yeah. Yeah. You had mentioned before, like your language. You have your language, and
Yeah.
and your technique is part of your language, and
Yes.
how you express it. For sure. Yeah, that's great. And the thing I always say to my students too, like when you're practicing your scales, you're not just playing them for the sake of playing them. You're conscious of what you're doing. You have to be
Yes.
conscious of what you're doing. It's not just a memorized thing. Oh, I'll just do my scales, blow through them, and like be oblivious as to what I'm doing. You have to be very conscious of what you're doing.
Everything you practice, you should be conscious of you. Look, it goes back to what we were talking about, like trying not to think of anything in the moment, yet you're thinking very much or focused on the note that you're playing at that time. So if I'm playing a chord or a scale or a long tone or an overtone or I'm improvising, it's not really any different. All those moments are the same. And I am working towards having the control of my sound in that moment, whatever I play.
Yeah, through the range, everything. What's interesting as you're talking about this, I'm thinking about like a martial arts connection. And I'm going to use it this way. Tai Chi. Everybody thinks that, oh, it's just an old person's thing to do. No, it's not. Actually, Tai Chi is one of the deadliest forms of martial arts. It's just that it's practiced very slow and intentionally. And if, God forbid, someone who knows Tai Chi really well, God forbid they get attacked and they use those techniques, they'd use them in real time. They wouldn't do them very slow. I'd feel sorry for the perp that's going against them. Okay, so how does this relate to music? When you're playing intentionally and playing, whether it's a long tone or piece of a scale, it's really thinking about what you're doing and doing it intentionally. That's going to help you to build your technique more than just blazing through things really quickly and mindlessly. At least that's my take.
I agree 100%. I mean, my practicing, most of my practicing would probably bore people because I play slow. I practice slow. I practice, I have, I guess, a kind of a checklist, I guess I could say, of things that I pay attention to when I'm playing. Um, I went through a very long period, and I still do it occasionally, where I'll record myself, go back and like record a performance. And when I listen to it, I listen for certain things. I don't really listen. I try to avoid listening to a recording to judge the recording from the standpoint of whether I like it or not. Because if that's such a subjective thing. There's
Mm,
some people they could listen to something they could say, I really love that, and someone else hear it and say, I just don't like that at all. So I try to deal with the things that are within my control and I can develop through practicing, such as my sound. Is my sound in control? Like when I'm playing, if I play one note, am I starting that note correctly? And when I hold the note, the duration of the note, is it centered? Is it controlled? As I move through the registers of my instrument, is my sound uniform as I move up? Is it matching from one register to another? Or is there a timbral shift that's taking place? And if there is there anything that I can do? Hopefully, I don't want there to be a timbral shift unless it's just the natural shift that occurs based on the different registers of the instrument.
got it. Okay.
And then, am I playing in time? Is the note that I'm playing where it's intended to be? Is it supposed to be on the beat, off the beat? And if so, is it where it's supposed to be? Is it squarely on the beat or squarely off of the beat? Or am I unsure about its placement? And really, if all those things are in place, if I'm playing a good sound, I forgot to mention intonation. It's like, am I in tune? And not necessarily just in tune with everyone around me, but am I in tune with myself as I play from note to note? Are the intervals true? Because we know as you play a saxophone is a very imperfect instrument, and there are notes that are flat, there are notes that are sharp, and there are notes that are stable. And it's up to the operator to make adjustments in the way that you're blowing to make notes it's easy to adjust notes down, but it's not easy to adjust notes up.
Mm,
So intonation is a whole other, I could talk about intonation for an hour, but learning to play in tune with yourself is extremely important. So as I practice chords and scales, I often play them really slowly and I'm listening as I play from note to note to make sure that all those things are in place. So that when I am in the heat of the moment playing here, I don't think about that directly, but I have thought about it and it's informed my approach.
that's a great way of putting it. That's a really great way of putting it. And it's for me personally, like everything has to come from what you're hearing in your head. That's really important because I'm a brass player also, right? But I do equipment is important because equipment, you need the right equipment for you so it gets out of the way. And what's interesting, because you don't want it in the way, you don't want to be sitting there thinking, oh gosh, I'm playing this horn and I know like this one note, this front E is always going to be sharp. I mean, you have to work on your horn so that, you're aware of that and you know what to do with that, but you don't have to worry about it. So let's talk about equipment's not the defining thing when it comes to the player. You are, and the equipment has to match you so it can get out of the way, right? So I do want to talk about equipment though, because I know that you play the Eastman instruments, you play the Eastman alto, you do have the newer version of the Eastman 52nd Street tenor, and which is
Yeah,
freaking ridiculous and phenomenal. But I
great.
noticed in the videos, though, I do want to talk about equipment. I noticed that you didn't have the Eastman horns. So can you talk about your equipment? Because people are going to want to know, and they're going to be immediately like, Donna, ask him what he's playing. I'm going to get that stuff so I could play that high and that low with ease. It's not about that.
Yeah,
It's
no,
he's worked that through, but this is the equipment
yeah.
that works for him to do that. But what equipment were you using on those recordings?
Well, on this recording, I'm playing a Con 30M from 1941, and I'm playing a Brillhart 6 personal line mouthpiece, a very small opening with a 4.5 reed.
Oh my
Um,
gosh, 4.5. Holy
yeah,
cow.
Boston Saxophone Shop 4.5.
Wow. Was it Black Box?
Yeah.
Black
Mhm.
Box. Okay, got it. Okay. Wow.
And
Wow.
I don't know, I love the Eastman horns. Absolutely no, shade there. I love the Eastman horns and I love the Eastman company and the Eastman family. And I play the Eastman Rue St. George alto, all the time in my studio. And I play the new 52nd Street prototype tenor quite a bit. I'm actually using it right now because I have to get the thumb rest on my con altered a little bit to make it more comfortable.
Mm.
Uh, so I love those horns and they have a great sound and flexibility. But when I picked up this con, and I've had it for a while, and I played a few notes on it, and it just had a certain presence of sound that I haven't heard in any other modern instruments. And um, I don't know, it just kind of spoke to me. It's like the thing, it resonates a certain way. Um, and I had to go through a mouthpiece search for it. And I used to play pretty big open tip, like an eight star type tip opening, like 115 to 120
Yeah.
opening. And the mouthpiece that I'm using right now is only an 85 thousandths opening.
Wow.
But I use a really hard reed with it. And the combination on the con works wonders. Um, I can actually play higher than that on the con. And there's no fingering charts or anything that give you ideas, but I'm able to get overtones above it.
Wow.
Uh, and that's something I need to devote more time to when I get that time to just kind of working on extending the range even more. Because what I think is really cool about it when I hear it on that instrument, even though I know it's extremely high, it doesn't sound in any way out of character with the rest of the instrument.
No, no, it
It's not like
doesn't.
key or squeaky or anything like that. It's very controlled
Yeah.
and in tune and centered. And it's like, yeah, there it is.
But
And
yeah,
that's That's not the horn, it's the player hearing it and knowing how to blow it and get the note where it needs to be placed.
But
But the horn allows me to do it.
it does, but okay, so this is interesting though, and there's no question about that. It's the player. However, though, with the older horns, there are more intonation issues that, like
Yeah.
the good thing about modern horns is that, people are being very thoughtful and thinking about how to make the intonation better. And so
Yeah.
when you said it was like a Con 30M from what, 1941, my first thought is like, that's hard to control the intonation. Or, someone the other day was telling me, oh yeah, I've got like a horn from 1915 and 1917. I'm like, oh my God, that's that can be a bear, when it comes to
Put
intonation.
the right mouthpiece on it, the thing plays so easy. I don't have to do much of anything to it.
And that's the
It's
key,
very
no
well.
pun intended. That's the key. But, because I'm not sure, and I'm not sure how well a modern mouthpiece may do on some of the very vintage horns, I mean, we've got great mouthpiece makers out there. Theo Wana's, he knows his
Yeah.
stuff. Jody Jazz knows their stuff. But you mentioned like a Brillhart mouthpiece, and sometimes you have to think, what were the mouthpieces that were around during that time? Because that would be a good choice to maybe start with in terms of, those types of horns.
Well, I started down that path seriously because of Lou Tabakin. I took a lesson with Lou, and really it was just an incredible hang. We played for a couple of hours, and he got out his saxophones for me and mouthpieces of his. And I played on several old auto links and like early links like the master link and things like that. And I started putting together a collection of these mouthpieces. And uh, when I first played the con, I used a modern mouthpiece on it. And while I loved the sound, I didn't like the intonation. So I started playing earlier mouthpieces to find something that maybe matched better with the instrument. And the Brillhart that I'm using is an untouched mouthpiece. I bought it in New York at Roberto's,
Okay.
um, and it's just beautiful condition. And at the time, I didn't even try it on my con, and I had put it in my drawer, and it was like sitting here, and I thought, this is like from the early '60s, I think, based off the serial number. It's like, let me try this thing on there. And I put it on there, and it's like, wow, it played really easy and a lot of presence of sound. And I think when I first played it, I played maybe a 3 or 3.5 reed. And then I thought, yeah, this is a little light. I need a little more resistance because I'm used to playing something with a bigger tip. So I put a 4 on it and I was like, yeah, this feels pretty good and it works well. But then I found even with the 4, it kind of died, the reed kind of like just felt like it died out a little bit too quick for me. So I thought, I wonder if I move up to a 4.5, what that'll be like. And once I got on the 4.5, it was like, okay, this is it.
Wow.
Because this plays great. And then the thing about it is the reeds last a really long time. Um, I find with the harder reeds, they have a really good life. Um, I don't know why. I don't know if it's because, the reeds are actually not any thicker. They're the same thickness as a number one. The difference in the reeds is the density of the fibers in the cane. And they measure it, measure the flexibility of it. So a 4.5 has very dense fibers. And maybe it's because of the density of that cane that it just lasts a long time. But I find I go kind of between 4 and 4.5, and I've also been changing brands occasionally. I love Rigotti reeds. Boston Sax are made by Rigotti,
Right.
and I use currently I'm using the Rigotti. They call it the wild one. They're like wild grown
Yeah.
cane, and I use 4s, and they work really nice. And I can even get a pretty lush subtone on the bottom of the horn with that.
Got it. No, this is great advice. And, it's interesting because I don't play a very hard reed. So I didn't know that in terms of the harder reeds lasting longer. It makes sense because I do know that the reeds that are softer really don't last a long time. Like, this is why, like, I never start students on a one, never, not even a 1.5. I start them on a two, and not even, I don't even do, I'm still going to call it Rico. Sorry, I'm not used to Derecho, even though they're from Long Island, right? It's just hard for me to do that. But, I usually would start students on like a two, Rico Royal Blue Box. So it'd be D'Addario Royal or whatever it's called. But I'd start them on a two there just to have a little bit of substance because the 1.5, to me, the one and the 1.5, it's too soft. And then to me, it's just going to get harder and harder for them to get used to playing, a reed with a little bit more substance to it. But
Yeah.
yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense that the harder reeds would last longer. And then let's talk ligature though. Do you feel that what ligature are you using, and do you feel that that makes a difference for you?
I'm using a guy made a kind of a repop of the Brill Heart, ligature with the bees. I actually have an original Brill Heart, but I don't use that one. So I have the three band brass ligature that I use. So it's kind of a remake of the Brill Heart three band brass ligature. And I don't remember the company that makes it. Hold on.
Oh, okay.
I have the box.
Oh, awesome.
Echo Master.
Oh, okay. That's new. I never heard of them.
Yeah, it's Echo Master. And I found it online, and someone had mentioned it, and it wasn't a cheap lig, but I wanted to try it, and I liked the three band Brillhart ligature, but I didn't want to take that one out and use it all the time because they're pretty valuable. People want them,
Okay.
and
Be careful.
I it's it's worth more than the mouthpiece. I think the ligature's worth more than the mouthpiece.
Wow.
Um,
Okay.
um, And I don't know what it is about it, but it really plays beautifully. It's got a very nice space where it kind of like a saddle where the reed sits in it. So it holds the reed beautifully against the table. And it's just great. It works wonders.
Yeah, I personally, and again, I'm part of the Rovner products family, and I personally do think that ligatures do make a big difference. I really do. Some people don't, and that's cool. It's all good, but I think especially, when you're using especially a vintage horn, I think you do have to be more mindful of your equipment. I think you are a little bit more limited if you can use a modern mouthpiece per se, but there probably will be intonation issues because again, like, some of the awesome mouthpieces that we have now, it's astounding when you think of all the mouthpieces we have now. It's incredible, right? But they
Mhm.
weren't around back then, and so you kind of have to think of what choices did you have at that time and start from there at least, but I just, as I was listening and then I'm watching, I'm thinking that's not an Eastman horn, and I'm normally not a gear geek. I'm normally not. Find something that works for you, use it. Awesome, that's great. And as Darren Ron said to me numerous times, you want equipment that gets out of your way. That's the thing.
I,
Because you don't want to be thinking about that. Yeah,
I
yeah,
totally agree. And I mean, I love my Eastman tenor, and it plays very well. And in a lot of ways, it's comparable to this instrument. But I don't know what it is. There's just some kind of resonance that's in that horn. Um, I don't know. It's almost explosive. It's like I feel like I can play quiet on that instrument, and it's still you hear it everywhere.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
a resonance when you hear it live. I get comments from people, other musicians that I've worked with a lot when I'm playing on that setup. They're just like, that really is a big sound, or like a full sound. And um, I'm not working a lot in order to get it. It just comes out.
Is that horn? I'm just curious too. Is that horn is a larger bore, or is it like, I know the Mark Sixes? I think the bore's a little bit smaller than some of the modern horns, unless I'm pretty
Yeah,
sure about that. Then.
what I've noticed with a lot of instruments, and in particular Mark Sixes and also SBAs, which I've owned several of both, um, I love the sweetness of the French, the French instruments and the way that they sound. But one thing I've noticed with them when you get into the upper end of the instrument, like into the palm key area, that the sound becomes a little more closed. Like the tube is small, the holes are smaller. The con, I don't know, the bore is a little bit different. When I get into that area of the instrument, it's not constricted.
Mm,
So as I move up, the palm keys sound just as thick as anything else on the left hand. So I don't feel like the sound gets smaller. And as a result, the altissimo is better. You know, the
okay.
altissimo is just like because I use the palm keys for a lot of the altissimo notes. So I use a kind of overblowing sixths method, like is laid out in Rousseau's book, Saxophone High Tones. And so they're real facile fingerings, shorter fingerings, and they're really full sounding. They don't sound thin or closed off. I'm not having to use more awkward fingerings in order to achieve that full sound.
First of all, that's a great tip also. That really is because there's two things in that. Number one, if your palm keys sound thin, I mean, first, you have to check your embouchure and how you're blowing and, your understanding of the pitch and hearing it. But if your palm keys are thin, then it goes to say if you do use a lot of overblown sixths for your approach for altissimo, chances are that those are going to sound thin as well. And you talked
Yeah.
about like the timbral changes and checking for that when you're checking your own recordings. But and then that can lead you to using some other fingers that are a little bit more awkward. But I was just thinking off the top of my head too, like the Eastman horn. I know the intonation, the new, especially the new 52nd Street, especially that, all of them, but especially the 52nd Street, the intonation's impeccable on that,
Yes,
and
it's
I mean,
mhm.
you don't hear a timbral difference with fourth line D, which is always like stuffy and sharp, and and even the palm keys too, like they're not thin either, so.
No, I don't have that issue with the Eastman. It's like the Eastman, that's why I said it's like the Eastman matches the instrument in that regard, and a lot of other instruments that I play don't. I mean, I've played $10,000, Mark sixes that have that problem. It's like I'm playing into that area of the horn and it kind of gets closed a little bit. And it's like, I don't want that. Um, I feel like the sound of a saxophone, it should be open and free. It should resonate. Um, every note should have a ring to it. It should sound like a bell.
Mm, yeah.
Every note that you play should have that kind of resonance and ring. And if it doesn't, then you need to rethink something. If you're not using enough air, you're not blowing correctly, or you're playing too tight and too rigid, and you're not allowing the reed to vibrate the way it needs to, that's an issue. If you're holding unnecessary tension in your throat or doing something weird with the placement of your tongue, that's an issue. But also, if the horn doesn't give you that, that's an issue. If the mouthpiece and reed combination doesn't give you that, then that's an issue. You have to have the freedom, the clarity of sound. I mean, your sound comes more, I think, from your mouthpiece and reed and all that than it does from the horn. Um, but that said, I still feel like with this horn, there's a little added whatever component that comes from it when I play it that I don't find elsewhere.
Yeah, that's the thing that it gives it that special sauce for you, that works for you,
Yes.
for
Hmm.
sure. But I want to track back also to one thing that you said before too. You find this stuff out by playing slowly, by really understanding your instrument and playing slowly and having the patience the patience of like a martial arts person that wants to become a master at it, for lack of a better analogy with that. But listen, just tracking back to the album again, congratulations on this. I think, it's so interesting to me and it's so cool. And just, the musicianship on this is insane. It's really insane. So can you remind everybody where to find you? Like what's your website and where will they be able to find this album to purchase it?
definitely. My website is simple. It's woodywitt.com. And I've yet to, the formal release date for the recording, I believe, is going to be October 1st.
Got it.
I don't have anything listed on my website yet. I'm going to be contacting my webmaster with files and all that and getting it taken care of in the very near future. It should be available on the website. I, at this point, I haven't decided how I'm going to uh, distribute it digitally. I think it's going to probably be through Bandcamp.
Yeah, I was
I
gonna say
am
that too.
not going to be making it available in places like Apple Music and all that. I really just don't care to give all my proceeds to someone else.
Oh, like Apple or Spotify, you're saying, right? So you
Yeah,
wanna,
exactly.
got it.
I'm
Okay,
not going to drop it on any streaming services like that. So if someone
got it.
wants a copy, they'll have to buy a physical copy from me, or they can, buy a digital download from like Bandcamp, and that's going to be about it.
Makes sense.
And then, of course, it will live. All of the tracks will eventually be released in video form and be on YouTube. And then I'll put those links on my website so people will be able to experience the recording. But at the moment, I've only printed a very limited number of physical copies, just 200. I'm doing some promo work with it and going to be selling them when I'm touring, and that's about it. And then if need be, I might end up printing another round of recordings if I need to sell.
Makes total sense. It makes total sense. It's you don't want to have too much product, and totally understanding in terms of the streaming services. A lot of people like to use Spotify, but as a jazz musician, as someone who's not Taylor Swift, you're getting fractions of a penny, you know, per stream, and it just literally doesn't make much sense. you know.
Yeah, it just doesn't set well with me to put something that you put all of this time and money and energy into creating a record and to put it online and stream it and give for companies that are going to make billions of dollars. I don't want to do that. I would rather have more control over the output of my music and the distribution of it, and in a way, to my website to get it or whatever. I just think I like that, and I'm very excited about the way that this thing turned out. The artwork is so cool. I have two students at Houston Community College that actually approached me and wanted to do the artwork.
Oh, cool.
And they did the artwork for this record, and it was all done like watercolors and ink. And I'm supposed to go pick it up. I have the original artwork will be hanging in my studio here at home
That's cool.
soon.
It's very retro. It's like very, 1968, 69 kind of
Yeah,
retro.
yeah, exactly. It's kind of got that vibe to it, which also fits the music. And they did the artwork while listening to the music. Their inspiration for the artwork came from the music directly.
And just like you mentioned Ornette Coleman, right? So
Yeah.
yes, yes, I think this has to deal a lot with like, the free jazz type of, the era for that. That's perfect. That's an awesome way, to kind of wrap this up. And I wanted to say one thing too for the listeners. I did an episode with the Saxophone Museum in St. Louis. You should definitely check that out because when you watch this video, like you're going to watch this video for this episode, the video, the links may not be available, but you're going to see parts of the pieces on the video. You're going to see his horn. You're going to listen to his control and the sound and everything. And you're going to want to check out the Saxophone Museum episode as well, as we got into a lot of the vintage horns and explanations for them as well. But listen, Woody, this was awesome. This was so great, and I'm so happy for you with this release. I wish you much success, and I hope that you're taking recordings of all your shows, and you're going to have a plethora of material to draw from to maybe perhaps put some more maybe future albums out. Because each of these pieces are going to evolve into something else, and I think that's going to be great for you to capture for your own sense of where they're going, but also for historical purposes too.
Yeah. Thank you, Donna.
Cool.
I'm
Awesome.
excited about it. We're going to record another album probably in May when I go back down there to tour again.
Terrific. That's great. Well, listen, Woody, thanks so much for being a guest on the podcast.
My pleasure. It was a joy.
Hey, today's episode is brought to you by Gig Salad, the easiest way for saxophone players to book more gigs. Whether you play jazz, classical, smooth jazz, rock, whatever it is, Gig Salad connects you with event planners across the US and Canada looking to hire live music for weddings, parties, corporate events. You're going to get leads that match your availability, your style of music, and it's going to help you to stand out on Google, and your gig money is guaranteed every single time. So head on over to gigsalad.com, create your free profile, and let them know that the Everything Saxophone Podcast sent you. Here's to you getting more gigs through Gig Salad.